So Matt Miller just posted a 2-round NFL mock draft on ESPN with the conclusion of the Senior Bowl and the winners and losers from that week. So I wanted to run through a Superflex rookie mock draft by how I think ADP would look for these rookies based on the landing spots from Matt's mock draft. Before we do get started, just a quick note. Matt only had one running back go in the first 2 rounds, so to fill out a full 2-round rookie draft, I added in a couple more running backs in what I would consider to be ideal landing spots for them in the 3rd and 4th round of the NFL draft. So hopefully that makes sense when we get to that point. But with the 1.01, we have Marvin Harrison Jr., who lands 4th overall to the Arizona Cardinals, which is about as ideal of a landing spot as possible for MHJ, being paired with Kyler Murray. This is essentially the 2024 version of Jamar Chase going top 5 to pair with Joe Burrow, obviously without the college familiarity, but in terms of elite rookie wide receiver pairing with elite NFL quarterback, this is it right here. Regardless of if Hollywood Brown is back or not since he's a free agent, Marvin Harrison Jr. will be the wide receiver 1 from day 1 in the Cardinals offense, and that's why he goes 1.01 here, even in Superflex leagues. With the 1.02, it is Caleb Williams going 1st overall to the Chicago Bears. Without really getting into the Fields versus Caleb debate, this is the best landing spot for Caleb Williams outside of him just almost completely falling out of the top 10 essentially. He'll have DJ Moore, he'll have Cole Kmet, a solid run game. Luke Getsy is gone at offensive coordinator. It's now Shane Waldron's offense, and with the Bears' other 1st-round pick, Matt has them taking Olu Fashanu out of Penn State to shore up that offensive line as well too. Honestly, Caleb will still go 1.01 in a bunch of Superflex leagues, even if Marvin Harrison Jr. goes to Arizona, so it really just comes down to your own personal preference or even need when deciding between these two at the top. At the 1.03 now, we're actually going back to wide receiver with Malik Nabers, who lands 5th overall with the LA Chargers, and oh my goodness, does this landing spot just feel like a dream come true for Malik Nabers. It just feels like he could go absolutely nuclear in year 1 when paired with Justin Herbert. Regardless of what happens with Keenan Allen and Mike Williams this offseason, since both of them could be cap casualties. So if one or both of Keenan or Mike Williams are gone, and we insert Malik Nabers as the wide receiver 1 in LA, I mean, that might just be a better situation than Marvin Harrison Jr. in Arizona. This is exactly what I was talking about in my most recent Malik Nabers video, where I said I wouldn't be shocked at all if Malik Nabers ended up having the more productive fantasy football career than Marvin Harrison Jr. when it's all said and done. And honestly, it might make sense to try to trade back from 101 to 1.03 to get Malik Nabers if this actually does happen. All right, now I'm going to combine 104 and 105 because they're both quarterbacks, and we can talk about why I have them ordered this way. 1.04 is Drake Maye, who goes 2nd overall to the Washington Commanders, and then 105 is then Jayden Daniels going 3rd overall to the New England Patriots. And I think just from hearing the landing spots, you understand why I have them in the order that they are in. Washington is a very solid landing spot, especially for a quarterback like Drake Maye. You have Terry McLaurin, you have Jahan Dotson, a solid run game with Brian Robinson. I'm not going to say he has a good offensive coaching staff, but maybe safe is a better word. With Dan Quinn at head coach and Cliff Kingsbury at offensive coordinator, it doesn't feel sexy, and that's why I have Malik Nabers going above Maye, even in Superflex leagues, but it doesn't feel bad, like you just took a Jared Goff for a younger Derek Carr type of quarterback that maybe, who knows, he becomes more of a Dak Prescott or Justin Herbert type of fantasy quarterback in a couple of years. Now for Jayden Daniels, the Patriots landing spot is less than exciting because of the complete lack of weapons on the team currently. Plus, we have a brand new head coaching staff with Gerard Mayo and Alex Van Pelt at offensive coordinator. We don't really know what to expect here, but Daniels is still very much worth taking at 1.05 because of the rushing upside that he has. He doesn't need all the receiving weapons in the world, where he himself is a weapon for fantasy purposes. This could be Lamar Jackson 2.0 or Josh Allen 2.0, because when they first started, they didn't really have weapons either, but they did well for fantasy because they rushed for over 500 yards or a lot more and double-digit touchdowns until eventually their teams gave them weapons. And who knows, New England has a ton of cap space that by the time we get to the draft and they take Jayden Daniels 3rd overall, they could have signed a T. Higgins or a Michael Pittman type of wide receiver, or maybe a couple of lower level players like Curtis Samuel, Darnell Mooney, Josh Reynolds types of players that at least instills a little bit more confidence into that receiver room that isn't just Demario Douglas, Devontae Parker, and Juju Smith-Schuster. But the main point here is still that we have a high investment in Jayden Daniels at 3rd overall in the NFL, and his rushing ability for fantasy football makes him a top 5 pick. All right, 1.06, I have Brock Bowers going 14th overall to the New Orleans Saints. Another great landing spot immediately for an elite rookie prospect. I think Bowers gets the nod here at 106 over Rome Odunze strictly because of the caliber of prospect that he is at the position that he's playing and the landing spot with Derek Carr that I can already see right now the Darren Waller cops coming out and just how much Derek Carr loves throwing to tight ends. It's going to prop Buck Bowers up a little bit in rookie drafts. I definitely understand if 106 feels a little rich for a tight end in rookie drafts, especially if you were one of the people that were burned by Kyle Pitts and drafting him way too early in rookie drafts. But we also just saw a rookie tight end finish as the fantasy tight end 1 in 2023 in Sam Laporta, plus amazing performances from other young tight ends like rookie Dalton Kincaid and second year Trey McBride that I think people who don't have any of those three players are going to try to want to get one, and they go after Brock Bowers in rookie drafts at this price point, the 1.06. And then at the 1.07, as I just alluded to, it is Rome Odunze, who was drafted earlier than Brock Bowers at 6th overall, but to the New York Giants. And I can see this going one of two ways for people analyzing the landing spot. It's either going to be, ew, gross, the New York Giants with Daniel Jones and a really bad offense. What a terrible landing spot for Rome Odunze. Or, hey, I get that it's a bad offense, but who else are they going to throw to? He's the immediate wide receiver 1 with 120 plus targets guaranteed in year 1. It's like having Garrett Wilson on the Jets. So I am in on Rome Odunze with the New York Giants. And as a talent over situation guy myself, I leaned more towards the latter, but I think there was going to be enough people saying the former that Odunze ADP quote unquote falls to 1.07 behind Brock Bowers in this situation. But like I said, I actually really like the landing spot. I think it will be rough at first, especially with Daniel Jones, but he'll be someone that gains a lot of value in 2025 because of changes to the Giants offense or just a breakout prediction like we were hoping for with Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, or Drake London. I am in on Rome Odunze in New York. Just like we did before with 104 and 105, I'm going to combine 108 and 109 because it's another two quarterbacks, and I had a tough time trying to separate the two, honestly. So 1.08 is JJ McCarthy going 13th overall to the Las Vegas Raiders, and 1.09 is Bo Nix going 12th overall to the Denver Broncos. I honestly really don't have all that much to say about either of these two guys, other than this feels way too high for both of them in both the NFL and for rookie drafts. But if this is where they go in the NFL, I think they have to be mid to late firsts in Superflex Dynasty leagues. I gave the nod to JJ McCarthy because I assumed that he'll still have Devontae Adams and he'll have Jacoby Myers, which is better than everything that the Broncos have entirely at the wide receiver room. But yeah, I'm really just not in love with drafting either of these two guys in either situation at this price, and I really don't have much more to say other than I think this is where they should go ADP wise in Superflex drafts. With the 110, we begin a string of wide receivers now with Xavier Worthy, who despite being the last wide receiver drafted in the first round of the NFL, he does get the coveted landing spot of the Kansas City Chiefs. So situation is going to drive up his price a bit to the 110. But this also feels like a really strong fit for Xavier Worthy, who made a living on big plays downfield at Texas, now going to a team that desperately needs that big play threat to replace Marquez Valdes-Scantling, Sky Moore, Kadarius Toney. Like all in one is one big replacement. And depending on if Travis Kelce hangs up the cleats after the Super Bowl this week, this landing spot might look even better if it's just Rashee Rice and Xavier Worthy as the wide receiver 1 and wide receiver 2 catching passes from Patrick Mahomes. At 111 now, we get Brian Thomas Jr. going 18th overall to the Cincinnati Bengals. Another great landing spot, honestly, especially for a player like BTJ. And it's also a really fun narrative of all the LSU alumni in Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and Brian Thomas Jr. all on one team. Honestly, I think you could argue BTJ going ahead of Xavier Worthy because we've seen the wide receiver 2 for Joe Burrow be more prolific than the quote-unquote wide receiver 2 in Kansas City. But Mahomes is a better quarterback than Joe Burrow, and Jamar Chase is much better than Rashee Rice for target competition. However, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, as Brian Thomas Jr. thrived as the wide receiver 2 for LSU behind Malik Nabers as a big play guy himself on the outside, hauling in 17 touchdowns on 68 receptions this past season. I think this is the perfect spot for Brian Thomas Jr. to grow into that wide receiver 1B role that T. Higgins also thrived in when healthy. And to round out the first round at the 112, we have Keon Coleman landing 24th overall to the Dallas Cowboys. Another landing spot where a prominent wide receiver 2 could be great for fantasy football, especially a player as dangerous as Keon Coleman. The problem with this landing spot for Coleman specifically is that I think it accentuates the inherent risk reward that Coleman has just as a prospect in general. He has one of the highest ceilings in the class, but also one of the lowest floors, and I think operating as the wide receiver 2 in Dallas, or perhaps even the wide receiver 3 to start behind Brandon Cooks, is somewhat somewhere where he can either reach that ceiling by making big plays consistently because he's not drawing consistently good coverage because CeeDee Lamb's on the other side, or he could kind of get phased out because CeeDee Lamb's on the other side, that he can't take that next step and becomes like a Gabe Davis type of player behind an alpha wide receiver. But there is enough upside here with Keon Coleman as a prospect himself and with the Dallas Cowboys offense, plus a first round draft capital to warrant him going at the 112 here in this rookie mock draft. Moving into the second round now, we have our first running back off the board with Matt Miller having Jonathan Brooks going to the Green Bay Packers in the late second round. And I absolutely love this pick on all sides because Jonathan Brooks is just essentially a younger version of Aaron Jones. It's a landing spot that allows Brooks to recover fully from his ACL injury back in November and not have to push to get back to full health, and they can work him in easily over the course of the season behind the starter in Aaron Jones. And then with this being Aaron Jones's final year on his contract, they can let him walk next year and hand the keys over to Jonathan Brooks in 2025 in that workhorse Aaron Jones kind of role in what will be his second year removed from the ACL injury. It is literally the perfect landing spot for almost any rookie in this class. The only reason that Jonathan Brooks doesn't bump into the first round is because of the fact that initially, with him getting over the ACL injury and playing behind Aaron Jones, he's not going to have that immediate workload, that immediate production for fantasy football. So he does fall into the second round, but he is absolutely the first pick at the 2.01. At 2.02 now, this is where I started to take some liberties with other running back landing spots on day 2 and into day 3 for just a little bit of accuracy with this rookie draft, because we wouldn't have only one running back go in the top 24. So 2.02, I have Braelon Allen, who landed with the Dallas Cowboys in the third round of the NFL. In terms of situation, this is about as ideal as it gets for Braelon Allen himself as a huge bruiser type of running back who needs an offense that is just willing to feed him 18 to 20 plus times a game, just like how Tennessee just feeds Derrick Henry every single week. And what offense better to do that than the Dallas Cowboys under Mike McCarthy? Tony Pollard is a free agent, so they let him walk, so they have a clear need for an every down back, and they fill that need with Braelon Allen later on day 2. Again, the only reason that he's not in the first is because he fell to the third round in the NFL, but I wouldn't be shocked to see him go in that late first in some Superflex leagues out there as people fall in love with his immediate opportunity as a fantasy RB2 in year 1 with RB1 upside. At 2.03, another running back that I took some liberties with is Bucky Irving to the LA Chargers in the third round. Again, another great landing spot for a player like Bucky Irving, who can just about be an Austin Eckler type of player in the NFL in an offense that knows how to use a player like that. Similar to what I said with Braelon Allen, the only reason that he's not in the first round is because he fell to the third round of the NFL draft, but I'm sure he would get taken in the first round for some people who fall in love with his landing spot as well too. But at least for ADP, he's going here at the 2.03. At 2.04, we go back to wide receiver and follow Matt's actual mock draft, and we now get to Troy Franklin, who some of you might have been wondering where he was after he wasn't up with Worthy, BTJ, and Coleman at the back end of the first. But the reason Franklin slips a little bit in this rookie mock is because he lands in Las Vegas in the early to mid second round of the NFL, and I don't know how people would react to that landing spot. Yes, initially he would be behind Devontae Adams and also probably behind Jacoby Myers as well too, but Adams is aging out and they could move on in 2025 or even prior to the draft this year, which would make this landing spot more desirable. And remember, the Raiders also drafted JJ McCarthy in the first round, so pairing their rookie quarterback with a rookie wide receiver, that could be a positive for Troy Franklin in the long run. This probably feels like how it felt to take a shot on Jonathan Mingo, Josh Downs, or even Jayden Reed around this pick last year, which worked out for two of those guys. So I think most people will just trust in the talent and draft capital of Troy Franklin to win out in the end and to take him here at the 2.04. At 2.05 now, we get the other Texas wide receiver in A.D. Mitchell, who goes to the Tennessee Titans in the early second round. And this feels like everything I just talked about with Troy Franklin. It's another weird landing spot with still kind of an unknown quarterback situation behind a really good but aging veteran wide receiver 1 and another kind of okay-ish solid veteran wide receiver 2. So who knows where the rookie slots in here initially. But again, I think people will look at Mitchell's talent and draft capital and be really happy to take him here at the 2.05 as the big play threat for Will Levis, who can hopefully grow into the wide receiver 1 role long-term on the team after DeAndre Hopkins leaves and then leapfrog a failing Treylon Burks in this new Tennessee Titans offense under Brian Callahan. So I'm comfortable putting AD Mitchell here at the 2.05. At the 2.06 now is a Senior Bowl winner rising up draft boards very, very quickly, and it is wide receiver Roman Wilson heading to the Jacksonville Jaguars in the mid-second round. And this pick is actually very intriguing because Matt specifically points out that the Jaguars only keep this pick if they do not re-sign Calvin Ridley as part of the stipulations of their trade with the Atlanta Falcons. So in this world where Roman Wilson is drafted to the Jacksonville Jaguars at this pick, he's going there to replace Calvin Ridley, which I think opens up a ton of possibilities for his NFL career. Zay Jones is aging out and is in the final year of his contract in 2024, so we could have a situation where it's Christian Kirk and Roman Wilson as the main receivers in Jacksonville with Trevor Lawrence at quarterback, which might make him a bit undervalued, honestly, at the 2.06, especially if Wilson just initially comes in and takes over for the Calvin Ridley role and production. But I still think people might be wary of raising his value up much higher than this, just because Roman Wilson kind of came out of nowhere. He did, but he didn't really because of the Senior Bowl, compared to a lot more no names like Troy Franklin, like AD Mitchell, who went ahead of him. At the 2.07, I plugged in Trey Benson here, who does fall to day 3, but lands with the Minnesota Vikings in early round 4, which could mean that he has immediate opportunity as the starter if he can climb over Ty Chandler and Alexander Mattison, which I don't think would be all that difficult for him to do, honestly. And let me just say, I would have put Trey Benson in as a 3rd round pick on day 2, but Minnesota does not have a 3rd round pick, so I just had to have him fall a little bit to them to that early 4th. But this is not a dig at Trey Benson or anything like that. It's just how the draft board works this year. So because Benson falls to day 3, he does drop down to the later half of the 2nd round in this rookie mock, but he doesn't fall all that far because of the landing spot still in Minnesota being perceived as good and being able to have initial immediate value. And then at the 2.08, I have the final running back in this mock. It is Blake Corum, who also falls to the 4th round, but landing with the Carolina Panthers. Another landing spot that could be perceived as having immediate opportunity if Blake Corum can overtake Miles Sanders and Chuba Hubbard, which I would expect he probably would be able to do relatively easily. So another day 3 guy who finds a good landing spot to keep him here in that late 2nd round pick, very similar to Trey Benson with the 2.08. At 2.09, we have our tight end 2 in the class in Jatavian Sanders, who went to the Cincinnati Bengals in the 2nd round to give them a legitimate threat at the tight end position. And I honestly love this landing spot too for Jatavian Sanders. I get why people would be down on it because they already have Jamar Chase, then they drafted Brian Thomas Jr. in the 1st round. So Sanders might just get lost in the target share here with those other weapons, but Sanders is a really strong prospect as well, and he could be more of the Tyler Boyd replacement in this offense as the over the middle, move the chains kind of guy. And I can easily see him operating in that space and seeing 90 to 100 targets a year, which will make him be in the hunt for a top 10 fantasy tight end every single year, especially if he gets some good touchdown upside from Joe Burrow in a really good Bengals offense. Then at the 210, we get the other Senior Bowl riser in Lad McConkey, who Matt actually has going as the 1st pick in the 2nd round, but he goes to the Carolina Panthers, which just does not sound all that appealing at all. Initially, he feels very redundant with Adam Thielen as they both play a very similar role, which is an argument for McConkey in the long run, but to start, I don't see how he makes much of an impact. Then we're also hoping that Bryce Young can develop on a team that needs a lot of work in a bunch of different areas offensively, but don't have the draft capital to fix everything very quickly. I just really don't know how to spin Carolina as a good landing spot for a rookie wide receiver, especially one that profiles more as a slot guy in the NFL. It just feels like a really weird pick, and I think if you're a Lad McConkey fan, I think you'd prefer him to fall a little bit more in the NFL draft and just land somewhere better than the Carolina Panthers. At 2.11, we finally get to our QB6 in the class, and it is Michael Penix, who fell to day 2 but got picked up by the Minnesota Vikings in what I assume was going to be playing the backup role to Kirk Cousins if they're taking him in the 2nd round. Now, we do get into a kind of Jalen Hurts, Will Levis, Jordan Love kind of territory here because Cousins is aging out. He is coming off of a torn Achilles injury, so if he's extended by the Vikings, it's probably only for like 2 to 3 years at most, meaning Michael Penix could take the reins somewhere in that time frame if Kirk Cousins isn't what he used to be or does get hurt again. So that is very valuable in Superflex. And let me just also say that this draft slot has nothing to do with Michael Penix himself. If he was the one drafted to Las Vegas or the Denver Broncos in the 1st round, he would be up in the top 10. And if it was McCarthy or Knicks drafted on day 2, then they would be the one that is down here at the 211. It is just the way that Matt's mock went, and this is the world that we're pretending to be in. And finally, at the 212, to round out the 2nd round of this rookie mock, we have wide receiver Jalen Polk, who lands with the Buffalo Bills in the late 2nd round. This feels very similar to the Roman Wilson pick, another kind of name coming out of nowhere but landing in a good situation. But Polk is a very talented wide receiver who could make his mark in the Bills offense with Stephon Diggs aging out and Gabe Davis potentially leaving in free agency. Polk could be the wide receiver 1B in the Bills offense like he essentially was at Washington, or even take over as the wide receiver 1 by 2025 if Stephon Diggs just kind of forces his way out and he's catching passes from Josh Allen. That is never a bad thing. So Ja'Lynn Polk ends this 2-round rookie mock at the 212. I will note that Matt had 3 other receivers taken in the second round of the NFL draft that I did not include in this mock that would have fallen to round 3, I guess, if this were the real thing. He had Xavier Leggett landing with the Saints in the second round, Devontae Walker landing with the Falcons in the second round, and Malachi Corley with the Indianapolis Colts in the second round. All 3 did not make the cut for this video because I don't think their landing spots are enough to raise them out of being third round dart throws in rookie drafts, but let me know in the comments if you think that they should have been included inside the top 24. And while you're at it, check out 4 late round rookies that Justin and I already have our eyes on through draft season in this video right up here.